So welcome. My name is Jacqueline or Jackie. And this is the last cooking demo for the food waste reduction series. So it's lesson 7. We have our other videos or other demos recorded, and you can find it on the CCE Tompkins website, and we can provide that later on as well. I can read it out towards the end of the demo. Today we are going to make the classic shakshuka, but also create like a secondary recipe out of the same ingredients. And a lot of these ingredients you'll find in your refrigerator almost all the time. Like we always have eggs, we always have tomatoes, onions. So those are the main ones that we're going to use today. And I'll go over everything as we move forward. And the purpose of this series is to basically use different ingredients or ingredients that we have at home, but we don't often use all of. So we tend to waste it. So a great way of reducing this food waste is by being creative with the recipes, trying different flavor profiles. You can also repurpose your leftovers. Another thing is to make stocks, which we have it was I believe lesson 3. It was one of the previous lessons. We made stocks. You can pickle certain items. So it's not just, okay, let's make the meal, eat that same meal every single time. It's about being creative in the kitchen, trying different flavor profiles, utilizing each ingredient in a different way. And I hope that you enjoy this particular recipe because it's one of my favorites. Once again, I have most of these ingredients in my refrigerator in my kitchen all the time. So it's just a great way for me to throw something together when I'm on the go, or if I need to meal prep. The portions are great. It's just me here in the apartment, so I could always utilize these ingredients and make a meal for like a week. So here I have a can of tomato sauce. I'm using this one. It's plain tomato sauce, no extra. There's no basil or like garlic or anything in that. If you have a different type, that's fine. Feel free to use what you have in your kitchen already. We have here minced garlic. I always have garlic in the household. I tend to use it for many of my dishes. I use it all the time, really. I have diced red onions. If you don't have red onions, that's okay. You can use like just any other type of onion. That's fine. It's diced bell pepper, this orange one. If you have green or red or yellow, feel free to use that too. Diced tomatoes. There's 2 eggs. I'm using 2. The recipe the recipe list or the ingredient list on the recipe card, it may say more eggs. That, of course, depends on how many people you're feeding in the household. It's just me, so I'm making 2 eggs. I may not even eat all 2 eggs. I may have the other one or the rest of the shakshuka tomorrow or something. So I'm just preparing it so that you can see. I can demo it for you. But feel free to use, and if you use as many eggs as you want. And if you do not eat eggs, that's okay too. You can substitute it with a different type of protein. Like it's going to change of the traditional shakshuka, but that's fine. It's quite all right. You can do use what you have in your refrigerator. And then I have cilantro, and it's mostly at this point it's mostly the stems. I do still have some of the leaves, which we'll chop up later, and that's just going to be the garnish to add some more flavor. And as we go, by the way, I am going to provide some tips on what to do or how to use certain ingredients if we don't use it all in this recipe, or if there are certain parts of the ingredient that we don't necessarily need. I'll provide you more tips. One last thing, I have the potatoes, which I diced instead of shredded because I don't have the grater. I don't have that anymore. So I diced mine, which is fine. You can also slice them really thin if you wanted to have it look like a potato chip. That's okay too. But this is for the repurposed meal, okay? So this is not a part of the traditional shakshuka. It's the second recipe that's attached to the email or on the website where you register for the class. Okay, I have spices here as well. Well, I also have oil, of course. We're going to use oil. I have olive oil. If you have vegetable oil or canola oil, that's fine. Feel free to use what you have at home. We have salt and pepper. I have paprika, which I always use. You'll see this on the ingredient list all the time. Chili powder, cumin. I believe I wrote down fresh parsley on the list, on the ingredient list, but if you have dried parsley, that's okay too. I'm going to use the rest of my dried parsley because I don't have fresh parsley and because I have very little left, so I might as well use it. And also, if you like spicy, you can use the crushed red pepper. I personally love spicy food, so I'm going to add some in mine. You don't like it, you don't have to add it. That's quite all right. If you have all of the fresh herbs, feel free to use that first. It's always good to use those fresh herbs first, and it has a nice flavor to it too. But if you have the dried herbs, why not use it? You know, that's okay too, if you want to add more. All right, so we're gonna get started here. The burner that you can see on the Zoom square, this is Jacqueline's iPhone, that's the larger one, and then I have a smaller skillet right here, which I'm going to just place like right in front of it. So this one's the main one for the shakshuka. It's a bit larger, and you typically want a pan or a pot that's like a little bit deeper because of the tomato sauce. You don't want it to like spill over anything. So I'm going to turn my heat on to like medium high, and I have an electric stove, so it may be a little different on my end. If you have a gas stove, it might be stronger, or your electric stove might work way better than mine. So it all depends, right? So just keep an eye on the temperature. We just want to have a nice medium high heat. Okay, and then I'm going to start the potatoes as well. We're going to do it simultaneously. Just because we're just frying the potatoes. That's all we're doing to it. It's just like an extra dish, an extra like a repurposed meal. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to turn on the second burner as well. That's going to be a little bit higher because I am going to fry the potatoes, and I want it to have a nice crispy outside, and I'll show you as we go. So we're just trying to warm up the burners for now. And I'm going to add some olive oil to the first skillet or the first pan for the shakshuka. That's about like 2 tablespoons or so. You don't need, we're not deep frying anything on the shakshuka. We just need the oil for the aromatics. So that's going to be the garlic and onions, right? But for the potatoes, you want some depth to your oil, a bit more. So I'm going to show you, I'm pouring some in now. Okay, and I'll show you how much there is. And it is a smaller skillet, so just keep in mind, they appear different, but see there's just a bit more, right? So we want the oil for the potatoes to be nice and hot because we are going to fry those potatoes, and we want a nice crispy outside. And then for the shakshuka, we want to be medium high. That's okay. I'm still going to let it warm up. Meanwhile, I am going to drain the water from the diced potatoes. I prepped earlier today, so I placed the potatoes in water so it doesn't get brown or anything like that. There's no discoloration. So I'm going to remove the water now because if I try to just put the potatoes with the water, with excess water into the pan, the oil is going to, I'm going to get oil on myself, basically. Let's just put it that way. And it's going to hurt. So just be careful when you're doing this, okay? Make sure you drain that water. So just one moment. Okay. So I have that drained. And that's still, yeah. Okay, so the shakshuka pan is ready, okay? We're going to add the minced garlic to it. And we're going to release those, or we're going to flavor the oil with the garlic and the onions. Want to coat it nicely. And we're going to add the onions now. And I like using red onions all the time simply because it adds more color to my food. And I know for me, the appearance of my food is a big thing. So I try to have different colors, textures, and just different ways of plating it. It's always appealing to me. It makes me excited of what I'm going to eat that next day, right? And then I can have a different dish for the following day. Similar colors, but at least it's presented differently to me. So that's another way to get yourself motivated to just eat those leftovers. I know some people aren't fans of leftovers, but you know what? It is going to reduce the amount of food waste you have in the household, which is a good thing. You know, you're not going to have to toss all that food anymore. You can just use it again and eat it and enjoy it. So we're going to let caramelize a little bit. I did it. Mine onions are a little bit larger. If you want it to be, well, actually they're a little bit smaller. If you wanted larger pieces, that's okay too. This is bite size for me, so that's why I cut it that size. You want it to have a nice coat of oil. I'm just going to stir it a little bit and then I'm just going to let it go, okay? Oh, also another thing I forgot to mention, I mentioned this in every lesson, always have tasting spoons because it's good to try your food as you go so that if you need to add more salt, you can add more salt. You need to add more spiciness to your food, you can add more peppers or anything like that, or just any flavor that's missing, you could always taste it. Or if it's too much, you know how to balance it earlier than later, which is always great. So I'm checking the oil now for the potatoes in the other pan, and you see how it's a bit thinner? That's what you want for that oil. You don't want it to the point, however, you don't want it to the point where it's starting to smoke. So this is a good time to add some of the potatoes. I have this quart container, it's like 2/3 of the way full. I'm going to add about half of it. I'm not going to add the entire thing because that's going to lower the temperature of your pan. And then that's not going to give you that nice crispy outer shell, I guess you can call it, of the potato. And that goes for anything you're frying or deep frying. If the more you add into the pan, the lower the temperature gets, okay? So I'm going to use the tongs to help me because it's going to be hot. So you just have to be very careful. And I'll show you the amount that I have in here in the pan. Just so you get a sense of how much is in there versus what's in the portion container, plastic container. Okay. So I'm going to show you on the other screen. So it still looks somewhat full, but if I were to add all of it, see, I still have a 10 here, then that would be overcrowding, and that's not a good thing. It's not something that you want. I chose to use potatoes because for the alternative or the repurposed meal, the second meal, because I always tend to have potatoes in the household. Sometimes I don't want a baked potato. Sometimes I don't want to fry it. Sometimes I don't want to boil potato. Like I don't want mashed potatoes. You know, what are other ways we can use this? What other flavor profiles could we use or could we eat with the potatoes, right? So we're going to use the tomatoes, the shakshuka, change it up a little bit. And it's just a nice meal because you can make a bowl out of it. Okay, so I'm going to let the potatoes go for now. I am going to add a little bit of salt. I'm going to season a little bit as I go. That's okay. You don't have to put too much because you can always add more salt after you fry too. Another thing. And since I'm frying these, I do want to remove the excess oil once I finish. So I do have a plate ready and I have the paper towel. So I'm going to place it there so it absorbs that excess oil, doesn't get soggy. And the nice thing is that if you have the potatoes the day before, let's say you don't have time the next day and you still have leftover shakshuka, then just make it while you're making the shakshuka so that it's like you're meal prepping, you know, like you know ahead of time, okay, I'm having shakshuka the first night, the second night, I want it to be something a little different, like if it's grated potatoes, then grated fried potatoes with a tomato sauce. Same ingredients, but presented differently. Okay, so we're going to stir, just going back to the larger skillet or the one that's on the screen. Just going to stir this a bit. You can see the garlic is getting brown, right? You can see the bits and pieces they're getting brown. That's what you want. You want that flavor to come out. That's looking good. So at this point, we are going to add the bell peppers. And just give it a good stir, just so the oil coats it as well. And this looks like a good portion, right? Like this is the skillet is taken. Well, it's hard to see it on Zoom, I guess, but it's quite a bit. And this is 1 onion, 1 bell pepper, and you get like how many portions of the shakshuka already. And it's great because once again, you can meal prep this. You can ahead of time and then separate it into portions if you want, so that it's all ready for you. You can also eat this with pasta. If you don't want potatoes, that's fine. You can just boil some pasta. You can use this as a sauce. The flavor might be a little different and you may not want the egg. That's totally fine. Just eat the egg the day before, the first day. But you can have it with pasta. You can also have it, well, traditionally the shakshuka, you can have it with pita bread, right? So you can have it with bread again if you wanted to, but if you're gonna have bread with it the first day, then that's, I mean, you can change it up. Okay, so I'm just gonna stir this a little more. Okay. And then the potatoes are working. And I'm using tongs. If you have something else that's easier for you, that's okay. I'm just trying to move them around so that all sides are getting nice and crisp. Okay. Getting there, it's taking time. I'm going to increase the heat on the potatoes a little bit because it's my stove. It's not necessarily the potatoes or anything like that. It's just my stove. Okay, so next we're going to add the diced tomato to the shakshuka. I do want the tomato to somewhat melt down a little bit, like break down, I should say, not melt down. I'm just gonna break it down a little so it has a nice texture to it. You want your final product to be chunkier and have some like firm pieces of tomato, then don't cook it as much. That's totally fine. It's up to you. Everyone has prefers their vegetables a certain way or their meals a certain way. That's okay. And then you're going to start seasoning. I'm going to season, I have measurements for the seasoning on the ingredient list, but I usually eyeball when I cook. So I'm going to add some now, and then I'm going to add the tomato sauce, and then add more later on. I'm going to taste it first, okay? Or taste it before I add more later on. So I'm adding some paprika now. The chili powder. I'm running out. This is clearly because I use a lot of chili powder in my home, so it's almost done. So yeah, paprika, chili powder. I'm going to add some of the parsley. It's dried parsley that I have. I'm going to add some of it now, and I usually just I put it in my palm if it's dried, and then I just crush it up with the other hand. Just releasing some of that flavor. Okay, some of that. I am going to add the crushed red pepper flakes to pepper flakes to my line. Okay, I'm adding quite a bit because that's how I like my food. You don't have to. And then we have the cumin. And just a quick comment. We do have the resource on the CCE Tompkins website for different flavor profiles and spice blends. So you can always refer to that if you have different spices that you're not familiar with. You can always create something new. That's the fun thing about cooking these meals. You can always try different things, especially if you're going to repurpose your meal. You can go light on the spices initially And then when you're repurposing it, just add a different flavor. So let's say you wanted to add oregano, that would be really nice, or basil to the and the onions and all of that. It's nice too. And if you have fresh herbs, if you have like an herb garden, why not use those herbs and add it to your dishes? You can always flavor and spice up your food some more. Okay, so I'm letting this break down a little bit more. Just let it go. I'm going to add some salt and pepper, and then we're going to check on the potatoes. Okay. And I know for tomatoes, I like eating tomatoes in different ways. You know, you can have it fresh if you want to put it in a salad. You can always cook it. And tomatoes go with many meals, right? There's all different ways you can cook tomatoes. But if you want to try something a little different, I won't say very, very different, but a little different, why not try it this way? And there's you can have tomatoes in different forms. It's not like celery where you have to eat whole celery. Unless you like celery juice, which I do. I drink that, but I know not too many people like celery juice. Tomatoes, you can have tomato juice. You can have tomato sauce. The diced tomatoes, fresh tomatoes, cooked tomatoes. There's all different ways to have it, right? Fried tomatoes, that's always great too. This is just another way of making it, flavoring it nicely. Okay, I'm just stirring it. So I don't know if you saw that little piece in here. Oh, here it is. So you'll see some of the little piece of the core. It's right there. When I cook, I just add it because at that point, I don't even taste it. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me. But if you remove that part of the core, then save those pieces so that you can compost it, or save it so that you can add it to a stock or something. You don't have to toss that. That's another part of the list of things that you can put in that's considered vegetable scraps. Similar to the cilantro that we're going to use. I have a lot of the stem here. Am I going to eat this? I could if I really wanted to. I could just eat it like this, but I don't think I'm going to. So I am going to actually save it for stock later on. And we do have, if you don't know how to make a stock, we do have a video recorded the previous lesson on stocks. So feel free to watch that video or look at the ingredient list for that specific recipe. And you can use that. For this, you can add it to a soup. That's always nice too. You can use it for salsa. The other lesson that we had, it was tacos, 2 different types of tacos, but I also made a salsa with it. And I blended up the salsa, but I added some of the stems because, you know, not everyone wants to eat it in stem form. So why not utilize it for other things? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the potatoes at this point. And I'm just flipping them a little bit more. I'll show you. I'm just going to flip a few of them. So you can see what I'm referring to when I say like the brown crispiness of the potato. Okay. And the tomatoes in the shakshuka skillet, by the way, they're just going. You're just letting them break down a little. Difficult. Okay, so here, let's show you. See how brown it is? Has a nice crisp to it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Has a nice crisp to it. And we would, ideally you want that for all sides. Now there are smaller pieces on my end, so it's a little bit difficult for me to grab each one to turn them around. But if you can get all sides nice and crisp, that would be great. It'll add a different type of texture to your food too. So I'm going to let the potatoes go a little bit more. And we're going to go back to the other class, okay? And you'll see I'm stirring constantly because I don't want this to dry out too much before we add the sauce, because you don't want any burnt pieces. Maybe like a little bit of flavor to the tomatoes or something, but you don't want it to burn. You don't want it charred. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to add the tomato sauce. I'm going to add the whole can. If you have the jar, that's okay too. Okay. Quite a bit. Okay, so we just stir it first before I add the rest. Do you want it to be a little thicker? So if you don't have the tomato sauce, that's okay. Just adjusting the heat. you don't have tomato sauce, that's okay. You can use crushed tomatoes, have that. Or if you only have fresh tomatoes at home and if you have so many and you just want to use it all, then just use those tomatoes. That's okay too. It's tomato. You know, you can use it in different forms, like I mentioned earlier. And it'll give you a nice texture too. This is a little bit more saucy because I use sauce. This is actually a decent amount of sauce already, so I am not going to add the rest. I don't want it to spill over. That's one of the main reasons. My skillet is large, but it's not that large. It's not large enough. So I still have some left over here. What I could use for this, I can make it into a different type of sauce for a different type of snack, or you can just use it for a soup. Utilize that. Definitely not wasted because that's still a good amount of tomato sauce in there, right? You can use it for soup. You can make, once again, a different type of sauce where you're using different flavor profiles, different herbs, different spices, not the paprika, chili, cumin combination. And then you can make a whole other dish. But you have to make sure that you don't store it in the can. You have to put it in a different container, of course, and then put it in the refrigerator so that it stores properly. And then you can use it. So for the shakshuka, we're just going to let that simmer a bit, okay? And then we'll add the eggs. I'm just flipping more of the potatoes at this point. Do you have any questions or comments, by the way?
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, I'm with the diced tomatoes, fresh tomatoes, or did you use canned diced tomatoes?
Oh, those are fresh.
Okay.
Fresh
Is it absolutely necessary to use bell pepper?
No, it's a part of the traditionally, traditionally you can the bell peppers, it's just a part of that flavor. But if you're not a fan of peppers, okay, you'll have to add
They're not a fan of me.
Okay, I see. Yeah, you don't have to add the peppers if you don't want to. On the other end of the spectrum, some people love to eat the peppers, right? And then you can change it up. You don't have to use bell peppers. You can use jalapeno peppers. We made the other day, or for the other lesson. And let's say you don't use all of the jalapeno peppers. You can use the rest of those jalapeno peppers either to pickle them, because we do have a pickling recipe from the previous lesson, or you can add it to the shakshuka instead. Add some heat and flavor to the sauce.
Sweet peppers that are the problem, not the hot peppers are not a problem.
Yeah. So you can omit that from that whole list if you can't really, if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. So I'm going to show you the potatoes, smaller skillet. See how golden that is? That's what we want. And so I'm going to start removing it from the pan, and I'm going to alternate. But I have the rest of these, and I'm going to cook them. The other half. So I'm going to place these. I'll show you the plate as soon as I finish putting them on the removing them from the pan, excuse me. Meanwhile, we're just letting that shakshuka simmer. You can see it starting to bubble. You don't want it to boil. There's no need for that. So I'm just putting this here. This could be a snack too. So similar to like French fries and how those could be snacks, or potato chips or something, you can make your own if you have excess potatoes, and then just put a little bit of the sauce. And if you like cheese, if you're a fan of cheese, sprinkle some cheese on there, and just put it in one of those like little, it's like an ice cream cup, like that size portion. It can just be a snack, it doesn't necessarily have to be an entire meal. Okay, just bear one more moment. Just trying to get all these little bits and pieces. If you don't remove all the bits and pieces from here, it's going to burn, and it's going to leave a not so great flavor in your oil. All right, so I'm going to show you the potatoes that I have on the plate. So here, how golden. So yeah, it has a nice golden color to it, crispiness to it. I'm going to sprinkle some of the salt now. I did it earlier, but you can add some more, just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to add the rest of the potatoes to the pan. And if you did not want to cook all of your diced potatoes, if you feel like it's just too much, for you or for the people who are having the meal, then just keep them diced, of course, or I mean, you can mash them too, that's fine. But you can keep them diced, but store them in water once again, so it doesn't get brown in color or green in color or whatever. And then you can keep them in the fridge, and then you can cook them the next day. And you don't have to prepare them this way. You can always boil them, make mashed potatoes. You can bake them and use it for something else. Or this size would actually be great for this thing called torta. And I know there are many versions of torta, but the one that I'm familiar with is basically, it's like a potato omelet. And some people don't dice the potatoes, but if they're already diced, might as well use it. It's still bite size. And it's just a bit of a thicker omelet, I'd say. And it's not like the French one where you have to fold the omelet. It's just like not an egg cake, just a bit, but with potatoes. And it's great because like a frittata, there we go, perfect, like a frittata. So you can slice that up too and then portion that for the week. You can have it for breakfast, lunch, however you want it, which is great. Or you can use this, once it's cooked, right? You can use it for a quiche too. So when some people don't pre-cook their vegetables when they're making quiche, but if you already have it cooked, why not use that? It's similar to the torta, but with a crust. The quiche has a crust. Okay, so let's just go back to the shakshuka real quick. So I'm just going to stir. It's nice and thick. You see the chunks of onions, chunks of tomatoes, chunks of pepper. It's nice. I have to turn up the heat on this a little more. And my potatoes are just going same as earlier. If you have to add more oil, feel free to do that. But before you add the potatoes for the second batch, make sure you wait for the temperature to increase again, because it's not going to be the same as it was. Okay, so I'm going to add, I didn't add black pepper earlier to the shakshuka, so I'm going to do that now. All right, that's just this. If you have white pepper, that's okay. Black pepper, that's fine. Whichever you have at home. Okay, and there you go. So there we go. Going to stir, and then I'm going to taste. And if I need anything else before I add the eggs, then we can add it then. Okay, tasting's good. It comes in very handy. All right, so stir it up and taste. And that's quite a bit of tomato sauce, so I may have to add more flavor to it. I taste the paprika, I taste the chili, and I taste the pepper flakes. I did add a lot, but I am going to add a bit more salt, okay? Because the acidity from the tomatoes, it's overpowering, and I like a little more flavor, a little more saltiness to it. I'm just going to add that. Okay, here we go. And of course, it's based on your preference. If you don't want it too salty, that's okay. And one more thing, actually, I am going to add a little bit. To add a little bit more. And quick thing, if you keep the flavors subtle for your first dish, when you repurpose it, it'll be easier to change up that flavor profile. That's just another tip. If you know that it's way too much, you're not going to eat it all in one day, and you don't want to eat it more than that. Keep those flavors subtle so that you can add. So I'm just going to stir that in. And the potatoes are still working. I am going to flip them a little bit before I add the eggs. So when we add the eggs, we're basically poaching them in the tomato liquid. And I don't know if you've ever tried poaching eggs. It can be difficult if you're just doing it in water. It can be very, very difficult because the egg breaks, right? But this, I don't know. I like the texture. It's with practice, you get a hang of it. But with the tomatoes, since you're actually eating that sauce with it, don't worry about the egg breaking apart or falling apart. It's all going to the same place. All right, so I have 2 eggs here. Once again, I'm only using 2 eggs because it's just me here. I'm going to crack it just because I can't. It's harder to reach. I have the potatoes. I'm going to crack it like this. I'm just going to place it right here. I have 2, so there's 1. And you're just letting it cook in that liquid. I'm going to do it 2 opposite sides. If you want them to touch, that's totally fine too. But I'm going to have them separate. And then I'm going to show you what to do so that the it cooks nicely. So if you have something with a bit more, I'm using a spatula, but if it's like something like this, it'll probably be easier. Why not show you? I have it already. So we're just going to kind of like cradle the egg yolk, because that egg white is going to cook no matter what, right? So we're going to cradle it a little bit. And that's just let it cook. That's all you have to do. You can put a lid on it, or if you have foil, you can put foil. If you have a sheet pan, usually you can use a sheet pan if it's like a large stock pot or something. So I wouldn't advise a sheet pan. If you have a lid, you can cover it though, so that the whole thing cooks even. All right. So we're just gonna let that go, and you'll see the egg forming once it's cooked. The egg whites. You can season it a little bit more. I am going to add a little more of the pepper flakes. So the pepper, and then I'm going to start plates ready, bowls ready. I'm going to eat it in a bowl because, as you can see, it has more sauce to it. And then I'm going to show you another way we can do it. And we can use a plate for that. So I'm going to show you the first day dish. It's called the first day, which is the traditional shakshuka. I don't have any pita bread. I'm not quite the baker, but that's okay. If you have pita bread or any another type of bread, that's always nice to have. But we're going to shakshuka in the second plate pack or something like that. Also use it as a bowl, nice potato bowl. And if you were to slice your potatoes, that would be nice too when you're plating it. If that's good with you, if you would like changing the appearance, like I said, the potato chips or something, wanted to use a mandolin and slice it, then you can do it like that too. But if not, that's okay. You can just do the diced potatoes, and I'll show you how we plate it. Okay, so that's starting to cook. I want you to see the egg yolk, so I'm trying to keep that out there. But you see the egg whites starting to cook. So if you had more eggs, you'd probably see it better. But that's all right. It's working. See, I'll lift it up a little so you can see. So you see the egg white starting to cook. And you just leave it like that. Let it happen. And meanwhile, you can get your plates ready. You can work on other parts of your dish. You can get all let's say you're prepping your meals. You can get the storage containers ready. So, and you need to label, do that whole FIFO thing, which is first in, first out. When you're storing things in your fridge, that's always good because you want the older items towards the front first, so you're likely to use those, and then the newer items towards the back. It's just a good way of keeping it nice in the fridge and making sure that you use it at its optimal, so you have optimal flavor, optimal texture, optimal everything, basically. I am going to try one of the potatoes while here. Okay, yep, it has a nice soft texture right in the middle. So yeah, so that storage is really important when you're doing, or the organization is really important when you're storing things in your refrigerator. So while you're waiting, you can just do those things. You can also, if you wanted more acidity, I did mention the pickled items from the previous lessons, you can always use that as a topper. Let's say you have your potatoes like this on the plate, you put some of the sauce, and you put, and say you still want the egg, you can put the egg on top, and then you can get the pickled onions, put that on top of here, or pickled radish, pickled onions, and cucumbers. You can use cucumbers too, or whatever vegetable you have. See, so you can build your dishes with these different items that you have already. If you wanted to have more flavor in the shakshuka, you can always add some of the stock that you made from the previous lesson, just even if it's just a little bit, because there's already liquid in here, right? So you don't want it to get too thin. Just add a little bit, add some flavor to it. Or if you'd used crushed tomatoes instead of the tomato sauce, it'll be a little thicker, right? So adding the stock may help that too, if you wanted some more texture to that. Okay, so the egg is here. Let's lift it up a little bit so you can see it. I think the egg white, see, it broke a little bit. The egg white's kind of scattered in here, but that's all right. Here you can see it a little more. And some individuals like the egg yolk runny. I'm one of those people. I do like that, especially if I have bread. You can just eat it with the bread, scoop it up with bread. And that's why I enjoy this for breakfast. If you don't like that, you can have the eggs fully cooked, and that's when the lid comes in handy. You cover the entire skillet or the pan so that the egg cooks evenly at the same time as the bottom of the egg or the other parts of the egg. So for me, I like this. I like the runniness of the egg. So I'm going to turn the heat off for mine, and then we'll start cooking. The potatoes are still going, the second half. So I'm going to let it go because you already saw the first part, and I don't want this to be hard cooked. So I'm just gonna let it cook some more. But now we'll plate. So this is probably easier to do. I'm gonna get the tomatoes first so that we have some on the bottom. And you don't have to have a large portion the way I'm doing it. If you want, like, if you're using the same size bowl, but if you want to put less, that's totally fine too. This is just going to, okay. So I'm trying to get the entire egg like that. Just want to serve it up top. My egg didn't break, so that's good. Great. All right. And I'll show you in just a moment. You can always chop the cilantro up. I'm just going to tear some of the leaves. And you can also use this inside. You can incorporate it into the sauce too, or the shakshuka. But I'm just going to put it as a topper. And if you wanted cheese, you can add cheese to it. So here's, I'll show you here actually, it's probably easier. Here's the first one. See, and you have your egg in the middle. And then the second one, I have the potatoes on the plate like this. If you had sliced it differently, you could plate it differently too, of course. You don't always have to dice it. And you're just putting the sauce here. Nice little snack. This one would be good with cheese, sure. I'm not adding the egg to this one though. So there's a second meal. And of course you could have more. This is a snack version, and you can add some more cilantro to it. You can add the pickled vegetables to it. If you wanted to add a protein other than egg, that's when you can utilize the chicken parts that you had fabricated. We have a video of the chicken fabrication in the stock lesson. So you'll see it there. And then if you're in the mood for some chicken, you can just slice up some of the chicken or have chicken shreds with the thighs, or use one of the chicken recipes from previous lessons and use it for this. You're once again building all these different flavors, building your meal and being more creative so that you don't have to eat the same thing if you don't want to eat the same thing the following day. So Yep, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you get to try these meals, these dishes. I know I'm excited to have some shakshuka today, especially on a gloomy day like today. So, any questions or comments? Chopped greens, yes. I'm so glad you brought that up, Baz. She mentioned that you can add some chopped leafy greens in the sauce, which is a great way to add if you have kids who don't want to eat their greens, or if there's people who don't like mushrooms. I know I did that to a friend once. I sliced the mushrooms really into small pieces, and then I added it to a sauce. And you're eating it, you don't realize it. It adds more flavor to the food. But adding greens is a great way to incorporate them into a meal. Always. Or even if you saute the greens, once again, another variation. You saute the greens if you have broccoli rabe or even kale or something like that. You can have that in a bowl, right? I always use bowls, always. I always have bowls as my meals. So you have the sauteed vegetables or sauteed greens, in the bowl, and then you add sauce to the top. There you go. You get your greens, you get your sauce. But if you want to cook it inside add it to the tomatoes, to the shakshuka, even better. It makes it nice, and the texture is just really nice. There's a nice variation to it. It's all different types of colors, all different types of textures, and it's great to eat. It's a great meal, very well rounded. I just can't forget about my potatoes 1 second. Do we have any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, I am very excited about this dish. I hope you get to try it, and I hope you come up with your own variations when you're repurposing it, not just having it, as a shakshuka. Of course, if you like that, by all means, eat that until it's finished. Eat it the whole time. But if not, then try out the potatoes or try it out with the greens. So I hope you enjoyed.